somebody's applying for work, and of course that's very much online now, whereas of course it wasn't before you actually physically went into the place. So just right off the top, given that is the nature of job application now, what are some things that people need to watch for?
So I would say, yes, of course, given that online applications are pretty common nowadays, I would suggest that people really do some research on where they are applying to. So if it's a company that they're not familiar with, I'd recommend that they really start doing either some open source Google searching. They can access different business directories, Better Business Bureau as an example. Really get out there and do some background and just make sure, okay, is this a legitimate company first and foremost? And second of all, are there any concerns surrounding this company? So have there been any reports of, fraudulent activity with this company? Has there been any, illegitimate activities whatsoever with the company? And if the person's satisfied that, this is a legitimate company, they are looking for employment, then of course, go ahead and, release limited information about yourself to the company to get things started.
Something that was really kind of in my last interview that was really kind of touched on was like you got sort of two general red flags. One is if you get an email from somebody saying I'm part of this company, which can happen when it's a third party site like Indeed or Kijiji. A red flag is if you get an email from these people saying we just need your name, your phone number, and your email. That's a red flag because that was already provided in the resume. So that's one, and then two would be if they're requesting information like we touched on, like social insurance number, when there hasn't been any sort of promise to hire or even an in-person interaction. So anything to add there, or is it more so just really agreeing with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, and as mentioned before, things like your date of birth as an example, your SIN number, those are very private, personal pieces of information, and that should really only be given if you're absolutely 100% confident that this is going to a legitimate source. It's not going to be used illegitimately or fraudulently.
Now, something that I do want to touch on is really what is being done with this information? Like I feel like there was a time that this information, simple stuff, your name, your phone number, there was a time that it wasn't so valuable, but clearly there's a value to it that people are trying to get it from people. Can you take me through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I would almost argue that things like your name, your phone number, your home address, those could potentially be considered public information. It's just other parts, other elements of your personal information, like your date of birth, social insurance number, healthcare number, passport number. Those other more important sort of government identification documents, those are where the concern comes in. And the concern would be that people will use that information for financial gain, typically, or just to take your identity. So if someone's able to take your identity with those documents or with that information, you're going to see things like, I can open a bank account using your name, I can get credit out in your name, or I could potentially access your finances. I could access investments, I could access your bank accounts, because if I produce a document that says I'm somebody else, and I can back it all up with different identification, then I'm probably going to be very successful at getting access to your finances.
Let's pivot a little bit to, because that's of course the perspective of a job candidate. So going to the perspective of an employer, again, with the age of so much job application being online and just the amplification of personal information value, what are some things that they might want to be careful of as they look for a candidate?
Well, that's a good point, and I think sometimes it can be in the reverse. But I think if you really stick to the basics, which are you're being very cautious online, so you are being cautious with information that's being given to you, and you're being cautious with information that you're giving away. But you're looking for red flags. Like as an employer, of course, you're not going to give personal information about yourself. You're not going to maybe send money to an applicant, let's say, if that was some type of deal, just in case you don't really know who you're giving the money to. But ultimately, I would say on both sides, probably the best sure thing would be, how do I get offline quicker, and how do I turn this into an in-person sit down or meeting, right? Because that's one obviously surefire way to make sure you know who your information is going to, is that you're going to meet in person at some point.
And this is more of a question, I guess, for both perspectives. But I really wanted to find when it is appropriate to ask for personal information, right? Like SIN and whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, when the appropriate time is to give it.
So that's a difficult question to answer, but ultimately I would say, as long as you've done your background, you've confirmed this is a legitimate company and it's a legitimate employment offer, I'd say at the point of which that the offer is made for employment, or you're going to be working for this company or corporation, it's going to be acceptable to give your SIN number, because that is definitely needed. That's as your number one identifier for employment purposes, right? And then of course home address, probably banking information if you obviously need to set up payment somehow to get your wages for the job, that type of thing, right? So like a blank check or whatever, account information. But again, you're making sure that this information is going to someone that you are absolutely 100% confident is a legitimate employer, right? And in reverse, I'm not confident that there's an awful lot of information to be gained from an employer. Obviously nothing personal would come back to a prospective employee, right? Other than just maybe some factual information about the company itself.
I think this is my last question for you.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on what you say.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I think we've seen this kind of with the CRA scam. It has grown. Mm-hmm. So let's say somebody were to encounter a scam that was so elaborate that it actually did at someone include an in-person interaction. Even there, do you have tips for things that they can watch for? Again, just red flags to tip them off.
Yeah, I would say knowing full well that the number one thing you're looking for is that if it's a scam, they're going to want to take my money or my personal information. So you're just going with the mindset that you should probably safeguard those things no matter what. And if you're going to meet with someone, then we always recommend you meet them during normal business hours, during a working day. You meet in a public area. You can always bring a friend or a trusted family member with you if you feel like that will just increase your safety. You can meet basically anywhere public, coffee shops, that type of thing, right? Public library or things like that, right? And just being very cautious. And again, if there's any questions, you should be asking the employer for validating or confirming information. You can ask them to produce identification to show that they're a representative of the company. And if at any point you're unconvinced that this person is legitimate, or that you might fall victim to a scam of some kind, then I recommend that you leave that meeting immediately. You can contact the police service to report it. But also you can still contact the police service if you're looking for advice or information, if you feel that perhaps this company is not legitimate or there's some type of issue with meeting in person. You can always phone us and then ask us what is our opinion on it.
And that leads me to just one more question, which is just sort of based on the third-party job search. Indeed, Kijiji, ZipRecruiter. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, I don't think the message here is to avoid those.
Right.
But is it for the job hunter and for the employer? Mm-hmm. Is there any advice other than just be more careful?
Well. There really isn't a lot, because ultimately this is sort of where our society is going. This is where technology is pushing us, and most of the time, majority of the time, it's a good thing, right? Our lives are becoming more convenient. Accessing information is just simply, in seconds, we can access all kinds of information, right? And I do know for a fact, companies like Kijiji, as an example, they have a number of safeguards in place that protect people that use Kijiji. And they do work actively to eliminate fraudsters off of their site. And they work collaboratively with law enforcement. And so there are these checks and balances in place. But you still, yes, have to be careful and just consider where your information is going.